We are enjoying more hours of power in the last few weeks. Stage 3 load shedding, only from 4 p.m. on most days. And we heard a few weeks back on eNCA that this is in part due to lower power demands from us, but also increased power coming from some of our wind farms. There are other factors as well, but it's all good news at this point. I'm joined now by Vally Padayachee. He's a former Eskom and City Power executive, but he's chair of the NRS Association of South Africa, the National Rationalised Specifications Association. Now, there's a mouthful. It's an independent voluntary body that brings together a number of entities, such as the regulator, NERSA, the Municipal Utilities Association around electricity, and the Bureau of Standards. Vally, thank you so much for coming in. We've chatted before. It's a really interesting job that you have. It's quite technical, so I'm always asking questions to sort of understand exactly what you do. But you have just finished putting together your 3rd edition, which essentially, my understanding, lays out how load shedding should work, what it looks like. In 2010, edition 1 went up to stage 4 load shedding. The 2017, the 2nd edition, went up to stage 4, stage 8. And this latest one is putting forward what stage 16 would look like. Now, of course, we are hoping we'll never ever get there. And given the situation at the moment, looking more and more positive. But talk to me about why you've done this 3rd edition, detailing what load shedding stage 16 would look like.
Good evening, Sandra, and a very good evening to your viewers as well, and it's a pleasure to be back, notwithstanding the circumstances of the subject matter. Yes, maybe just to, and I think it's important, and it's a very good question that you asked me, because I think if you talk about 16, it immediately creates trepidation and possible panic. Now, you mentioned edition 1 and 2. So with edition 1, just to repeat, we, inter alia, we planned for, in the unlikely event of stage 4, because at the time, and this was around 2008 and 2010, when edition 1 came about, we were around stage 2 load shedding, stage 1, stage 2. So as a responsible body, a prudent body, the NRS, we said let's plan for in the unlikely event of stage 4. But of course, we know that we went beyond that. 2017, we started going into stage 4 load shedding. Of course, we didn't get into stage 5. And we said, okay, in the unlikely event of us going to stage 8, let's plan for that. So it's an additional tool that we provide the system operator and the control centers. So that's from 2017 till now. Now we're sitting in and we could, and I'll say it again pragmatically, at this stage we can't guarantee you that we won't go beyond stage 6, let alone beyond stage 8. So for the last few months, almost a year, we started planning for edition 3, and with the different iterations and consultations and as engineers and technical, we've made a number of changes to that, and that's a lot more detail, another discussion. But what we've done, a significant difference, unlike stage edition 1 and 2, we've now taken the entire load of the country, say on average, which is about 32 gigs, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at stage 8, that's 16 gigs. And if we went beyond stage 8 load shedding, then the system operator, national control, the control centers, including the Munichs, would have went into an emergency contingency mode. And they're excellent people. They're very competent people. And then they would, at the moment, at real time, take decisions to mitigate beyond 8. What we've done now is, just to repeat, we've taken the whole load, that's about 32 gigs.
Yeah.
And if you accept and make the assumption that one stage is megawatts, and sometimes it goes to 1,200 megawatts. So what we've done is, mechanistically, for want of a better word, we've taken it around about 2,000 megawatts, and that equates to...
So on that basis, and 16,000 stage 16, and I mean, let me start by saying it gives me great comfort that there's a lot of engineers who are totally detail orientated, as you are,
yes,
looking at the minutiae of this, because it means there's a plan. And a plan is what could get us through some really difficult times and avoid a complete shutdown of our grid, which is what load shedding is all about. So there's a measure of comfort in knowing that you're planning for worse stages of load shedding. Of course, there's also that measure of fear. Stage 16, would that mean that we would have to shed 32,000 megawatts, 32 gigs, off our grid, which is essentially everything we use, but it wouldn't be a blackout?
yes, yes. Technically, yes. Why I'm saying that advisedly, I mean, we haven't been to stage 16.
No, we haven't got to 8
Right.
yet, officially.
Exactly. So we don't know the impact on higher stages of load shedding on the grid. But technically and mechanistically, and I'm repeating a point I always made on the media, that load shedding is an excellent technical management tool to prevent us from going into a blackout and the collapse of the grid. But having said that, Sandra, is that we're going to be careful. Load shedding is not the only tool that prevents us from going into a blackout and the potential collapse of the grid. There are a number of interventions.
Are you talking load curtailment, load reduction,
Well,
switching off people's geysers remotely, that sort of stuff?
Well, there's even a lot more than that.
Even more than that?
More than that, which system operator and national control have in their armor. Okay?
Okay, that's good to hear.
But load shedding is one of the good tools.
Yeah.
So I will just make that clear. But in terms of stage 16, we are saying it's the unlikely event that we'll get to stage 16, but we could go beyond stage 8, 9, 10, but not to 16. So I want to give the public that assurance that we did not include stage 16 in edition 3 because we think we will get to stage 16. We're saying it's the unlikely event. It's highly improbable, but that's why I make the point. We have other armor.
Look, you don't have to convince me because I like people who plan. I have to ask this last question, though, because in the last few weeks, we have seen, as I mentioned earlier, a reduction in load shedding in the middle of winter. It's incredibly welcome. But the question we're all asking, and because you move in these circles, you've worked at Eskom, you've worked at City Power, and you work with a lot of people who deal with this. Are we on an upward trend? Are we perhaps through the very worst, and we could slowly start to improve from here? Or should we not get our hopes up?
I think it's a combination of all of those factors that's at play at the moment. But we should not give you a false sense of significant hope as professional engineers, as a professional body. What I can say is that I think the Eskom generation people have come to the party, so they are making their contributions and efforts, so we must give them kudos for that. But what I can tell you from experience, having been there a number of decades, we're not out of the woods yet. So come third week in July or first week in August, that's going to be the significant test. Because you mentioned, I think offline, that maybe the demand has dropped. Generally, the demand increases in June, July, etc. But maybe with a number of businesses also battling economically, the demand has dropped, and of course with the curtailment programs. But I think third week in July, first week in August, where the demand could go up to 32 gigs, probably 34, depending. And of course, depending on the Eskom generation fleet, if we can keep the EAF up. I mean, we've done good in the last couple of weeks by 7%.
That's the energy availability factor.
So each 1% is about 500 megawatts.
Yeah.
So that's 3,500 megawatts that we've gained. So if we can keep that impetus, it does augur well. But I think pragmatically, professionally, we must still wait. We're not out of the woods. Third week in July, first week in August, that could be the deal breaker.
All right, so we'll proceed with great caution, and for that last week of July, first week of August, we'll be particularly careful with our power usage. Really appreciate you coming in, telling us that there's a plan. You look at this as an engineer, and that is important. We want to hear those details, and thank you so much for explaining it all to us. That, of course, is Vally Padayachee. He's a former Eskom and City Power executive, but he is the chair of the NRS Association of South Africa. They are completing their third edition, which essentially lays out how load shedding works to keep the grid safe.